You're watching the DSP Leaders Summit on Edgenomics. I'm Guy Daniels, Director of Content at TelecomTV. It's day 3, the final day of this year's Edgenomics event, and we are live on TelecomTV and also broadcasting live to LinkedIn. All our programs are now available to watch on demand here on TelecomTV and as part of our Edge channel. Now, it's been a jam-packed day. We've had panels on 5G and the customer premise opportunity, plus a couple of excellent keynote interviews. Hopefully, you've had time to watch them and are now keen to get involved. Well, this is your chance, your last chance, in fact, at least for this year. We are live with our third and final Q&A program, and we are waiting to hear from you. There's a form on the video page for you to use, and that will get your questions directly to us. I'm joined once again by the man who really knows his beans, Ray Maistre, Editorial Director at TelecomTV. Good afternoon, Ray. Ready to wrap up the Edgenomics Summit for another year?
Absolutely. Thanks, Guy. Well, certainly full of beans. Whether I know my beans or not is another matter. But it has been a great week. And as you mentioned, we've ended strongly on day 3. 2 great one-to-one executive interviews, one with Neil, who's with us today from BT, and one from Kandan from AT&T, who talked about the use of open source at the telco edge. So that was a good and different angle we've had this week. So yeah, it's been fantastic, and looking forward, of course, to the rest of this Q&A.
Indeed, it's been thoroughly enjoyable so far and very informative. Right, for the next 30 or 40 minutes or so, it's your opportunity to question our industry experts. So grab a coffee, turn up the volume, and compose a question or two for us. Meanwhile, let's introduce our guests. And straight from our earlier panel on edge opportunities at customer premises are Rolf Eberhardt, who is Head of Orchestration, Communications and Media Solutions at Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, who is joining us from Switzerland. Nigel Stevenson, Director of Market Development EMEA, Telco and Edge Cloud Business Unit at VMware, joins us from the UK. And Beth Cohen, SDN Product Strategies at Verizon, joins us again from the US. Plus, fresh from being grilled by Ray for his keynote interview series, we welcome from the UK, Neil McRae, Managing Director, Architecture and Technology Strategy and Chief Architect at BT Group. And from Spain, Jose Antonio Aranda, Innovation and Product Strategy Director with Cellnex. Welcome back, all of you. Thanks very much for taking part in our live discussion show. Let's get right to it. Ray, over to you for our first question.
Okay, great. Thanks, Guy. So we've got a question. I mean, there's been a lot of talk this week during the summit about enterprise use cases from edge computing. But we've got a question come in here, and I get a sense this has come off the back of the debate about telcos and hyperscalers, whether they'll work together, etc. And the question is, one of the enterprise use cases, is it a given that telcos will even be involved in this area? Are we assuming too much? So, Neil, is it a given that telcos will be involved in providing edge services to enterprises?
So, listen, I think we have to earn our right to be at the table in any situation. So I would never assume that we will always be involved with customer demands. But from my point of view, I think if we're not at the table, the opportunities will be a lot less, because ultimately, we control the experience that customers get on the network. We can fine tune it. We can do many things to make coverage better. We can also plug in straight at the edge at the closest point, either potentially at the cell tower, potentially on-prem. So I think, absolutely, I think there's a chance that we might not play a part. But I think that from what I see, I think the hyperscalers want us to be involved with what they're doing. We want them to be involved with what we're doing. But as I said on the interview earlier, Ray, I think the best return on 5G edge use cases will be where we collaborate closely with the customer and we collaborate in an ecosystem and a partnership.
Absolutely. Great. Okay, thanks, Neil. Anybody else want to come on there about whether telcos? Yes, Beth.
Yeah, so I'll add to what Neil's saying, because I agree with everything he's saying. And I think it's extremely important for both the hyperscalers and the telcos to work fully together, because we each bring strengths to that partnership. And of course, another part of the ecosystem is the systems integrators, and of course the new developer and the developers that are coming up with these new applications. So it's really an ecosystem that's being developed, and the ecosystem has to be driven by a strong integrated partnership with the telcos and the hyperscalers to make this all work, because together we can support the ecosystem of new applications that our enterprise customers are looking for, and of course consumers as well, because obviously gaming and consumer type activities and content delivery, media, streaming media, other types of content is very important to this partnership. So it's both on the enterprise side as well as the consumer side, but the infrastructure to support it, which is that integrated hyperscaler telecom partnership, is important for both.
Okay, so we're getting the sense here that telcos will be involved, but it's all about collaboration. It's all about partnerships here. Okay, great. So Guy, I'll hand over to you for the next question.
Thank you, Ray. We've got one in here. Rolf, I'd like to ask this one of you. One of the major challenges is having an overall view of edge assets and managing and orchestrating all of these. What our viewer is asking is the telco industry ready to meet this challenge? And if so, how?
That's a very good question. I do believe the telco, let's say from a technology perspective, we have everything which we would be needing. It's now about stitching the individual components together and create what Neil was talking about, the experience around it. And if you look so far, you would have had compute as one part, you would have connectivity as the second element, and then you would have the entire application lifecycle management as the third element to such a storyline. Now, the interesting thing is, from an enterprise and customer perspective, is to get all the components together in a one-stop shop, so that the entire stitching of the building blocks of the components can be done by them themselves in a self-service motion, or then through a separate asset provider. What we've seen is, when speaking with enterprises, is they don't want to build this know-how themselves anymore. They want to be able to buy this from a trust person, which, as Neil was mentioning, would be ideally a CSP.
Thanks, Rolf. Yeah, so stitching all this together, ideally the CSP, although alternatives are there. Anybody else want to pick up on what Rolf said there? Anyone else want to look at this question of orchestrating these assets? If not, we'll move across to you, Ray.
Okay, great. So we've got a question here, and I'm pretty sure this has come in following the one-to-one interview that we ran yesterday with Jose Antonio from Cellnex. And the question is, with 5G being rolled out now, are operators already demanding neutral host edge capacity? So obviously we'll start with you, Jose Antonio. Are you getting demand already from operators? Are they looking for neutral host services?
Yes, we find two types of operators. There's a set of operators, tier one operators, that are considering that edge computing in this early stage is a competitive advantage, and therefore they're willing to deploy edge by their own and deploy services that can compete with other tier one or tier two mobile operators. And on the other side, we find the mobile operators, tier two, that may be a little bit more open, that they are currently considering, and they are already making requests for information to different partners in the market to see whether the neutral host solution is something that could fit their expectations. And we have already been working with these tier two mobile operators in showing the capabilities of what a neutral host entity like us can provide. Things like sharing edge computing capabilities amongst different operators seems to be a good idea for different reasons. And we see that there is a demand. We also, together with the deployment of 5G, we also see not only the mobile operators, but also enterprises requesting edge capacity to third parties. And we have been approached as well by third parties willing to understand how an entity like us, like a tower company, an infrastructure company, can help them building edge computing capabilities for an enterprise or for a specific big area that they are responsible for.
Okay, interesting. So obviously some early interest there. Beth, did I see you want to come in on this one?
Yes, I did. Speaking from the perspective of a major telecom, obviously we're working with the hyperscalers. That makes sense. However, as Rolf mentioned, our customers are looking for multi-cloud solutions. So we as a telco operator are putting into place infrastructure, and we already have some infrastructure. And we're adding orchestration capabilities to make it easier to consume multiple clouds from multiple providers. I should also note that there's really two kinds of edge that we're talking about. We're talking about edge that's one step beyond the hyperscaler, the large data centers that might be in the COs, where it might be a couple racks of equipment. I mean, that's what we're doing with the wavelength offering that we're partnering with AWS on. But there's also the far edge, which is a box at the edge, which is at a customer site or on a light pole or wherever it is. And that's a use case as well, particularly in the IoT arena or retail, telemedicine, those types of activities, where you need the very low latency, and you also need to put the processing closer to the devices or the users. And that's something that Verizon is actively pursuing. We just announced today our rollout of VNS Application Edge, which is in fact it's a universal CP that supports our network services, but it also has the capability of allowing customers to put their own containerized applications on the same piece of hardware. So we see that as a competitive advantage, and hyperscaler type things can be put on those devices, the edge type applications.
Okay, so am I understanding correctly here? You're saying these assets could, in a way, act as neutral hosts. Third parties can come in and use them. It's almost like a wholesale Correct. Edge offering. Okay. Okay, interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's a piece of real estate on our universal CP that would be out wherever it could be, needs to be. That application could be, most likely it'll be put on by the customer, but it can also be put on by the by a third party as well.
Okay, interesting. So Rolf, I can see you want to come in here as well.
Yeah, it's just to that point. I believe Beth raised an excellent item with the multi-cloud capability. There is nothing like a killer app, the one solution which will rule them all, because every enterprise will be having its ecosystem, and it will want to replicate the ecosystem out into the far edge, for example. And it's our responsibility to make it as easy as possible to go out into that part. And to the point of Jose up front, yes, we're seeing that too. We're seeing also large multinationals asking us, how can we interconnect with each other? The approach which Jose is taking is definitely an interesting option as well.
Okay, excellent. And Neil?
Yeah, I think I'd just like to kind of balance them. So, I mean, we've had a universal edge solution for about a year at BT, and one of the challenges we see on it, and this is Edgenomics, is what we see is kind of a behaviour from customers who want the lowest cost solution, and we have to work with those customers to position. What is their digital transformation going to require over the next 3 to 5 years, and is the lowest cost CPE the right solution for them? But in some industries, that is a big barrier to this type of opportunity, which I think then enriches our own edge, because we're going to have compute power in our own central offices and exchanges that perhaps the customer can leverage as well for their services. So, I think there's a long way to go on understanding, which path this is, and I think having, we're going to end up with probably multiple directions. And the previous question about can we orchestrate this, then really starts to become super important.
Yeah, absolutely. That is one of the killer questions, and in a way, the killer application for the management of these assets, it would seem. Okay, great. So I know we've got additional new questions coming in, so I think we should move on to the next one in the hope we can get all of these in today. So Guy, over to you for the next question.
Okie dokie. Beth, I think this could be one for you. Operators are talking about creating federated edge networks as they look to push their international reach, but how is all this going to get managed?
Excellent question. So, Verizon is very aware of the need for international cooperation and federation across networks. That's what our enterprise customers want. That's what we're delivering to them. So we recently announced a partnership with Nokia to deliver 5G, private 5G in globally in the Asia Pac and EMEA in the US, which is a step in the right direction. Obviously, the public public 5G is a little more complicated, of course, because each region owns their own pieces. But the federation is an extremely important part of that seamless experience for the customers. Customers want to be able to, just go anywhere and be able to consume the edge applications wherever they be. And again, this is particularly true in the consumer space, but it is also true in the enterprise space around logistics and supply chain, which is also an interesting use case that I think will be another killer app.
Indeed. Thanks, Beth. Yeah, we are hearing an awful lot more about logistics and supply chain in this respect. Jose Antonio, you want to come in on this question?
Yes. We see also the industry moving towards this direction, towards having a federated approach that covers multiple countries. We are members of the GSM Association, and within the working groups, there is a work to see how mobile operators can define a framework to interwork for scenarios where users in the end are going to use the 5G services, for instance, VR glasses or augmented reality glasses. Once we get the users experiencing these services, they might be willing to also go abroad and experience in roaming while roaming, or internationally as well. And there is a little bit of work to do between vendors and the mobile operators, and there is already a good framework discussion to guarantee this as something that will happen in the next few years.
Excellent, good points there. Thanks very much, both of you, for responding to that one. Ray, I think we should crack on, and over to you for our next question.
Absolutely. Okay. Quite a broad, big picture one here that's come in. Where is the telecom sector in terms of edge strategies? How far down the line is the industry? So, Nigel, we haven't started with you yet. So, do you want to pick up on this one?
Yeah, sure. So I'd also, I mean, you're asking a vendor where the operator strategies are, which is perhaps a little unfair. But in terms of we'll hand it over to the operators as well after me, because I'd be interested. There's a few things that we're seeing, and there's something I'm seeing that concerns me a little bit, and actually some of the things that Beth and Neil have said sort of go some way towards pacifying that concern. But in terms of edge strategies, I think there's a couple of things here. So as a technology vendor, we obviously see a technology aspect to it, and the sort of strategies we're seeing, or the more forward-looking strategies we're seeing, actually bring two things together that I don't think we've alluded to, but we've not talked about on this particular session. And that is, you can carve up the edge yet another way. You can carve it up and look at edge applications as being network functions, so deploying network functions at the edge. And you can also look at it at deploying edge services, so multi-access edge computing type services. And I think Neil and Beth both touched on both of those aspects. The more advanced strategies that we're seeing are very much from customers looking to deploy technology strategies which allow them to deliver both those environments within a single operating or a consistent operating environment. So the reason I say that is because I'm also aware, and I saw a very alarming almost poll just the other week, that a number of operators, quite a significant number of operators, are seeing the deployment of edge services, customer-facing services, as a separate deployment from the deployment of edge network functions. And that, to me, seems counterintuitive, given that obviously that is going to increase your cost. So there's a cost benefit of trying to bring those two worlds together from an operational perspective. But also, I think it's going to limit, if you went down that path, it would very much limit innovation. In that I think there's a very much an overlap between edge services that you might think of as network functions, such as private 5G, and edge services you might consider to be MEC, which could be, for example, quality assurance in a manufacturing industry. So that you could very much see those two things being very much interconnected as the final customer delivery. So if this is true, and if operators are looking at separating out the delivery of edge network functions and delivery of edge services, then I think that would be a dangerous path to go on, and it would create complexity and cost and limit the innovation. So that might be an interesting one, just to get the view from the operators. And I think the other, building on that, the other thing that we haven't really touched on, we've mentioned third-party applications and so on. A big piece of this, I think, is actually the enterprise customer as a developer. So being able to deliver an environment at the edge that the customer themselves can use as a development environment and then build from there is also an important part of this capability. And I do think, and at VMware, we do think that the operators have got a very significant opportunity there, but it does require a shift. And one of the shifts brings me to my other aspect, which is the commercial piece. Building these more advanced edge services, so looking at things like MEC, one of the things we see across a number of operators is that they're looking at their customer base as the inspiration for those services. So looking as a strategy to work with key customers to really get into the depth of what they need and what would be valuable, and looking for that overlap between what the operator can enable for them and what the customer can then go on to use. And so I think if those strategies prevail, what we may well see is a set of operators which each have a very specific speciality and a very deep understanding of different markets, born out of the customers that are currently forming their customer base. So and that whole commercial piece is also very interesting, because that is going to require perhaps a different type of selling, a different type of customer engagement, to understand and then create those services and then subsequently productize them for a broader community.
Well, I think that only goes to show just how many angles and questions there are around these potential services and assets, and how big a strategic decision this is for the operators. I mean, Neil or Beth, do you want to come in and maybe pick on anything that Nigel just said?
Yeah, so I'll start. I'm sure Neil will want to pick up as well. there's a lot to unpack in what Nigel was saying, which is, we see very clearly that there's two markets here. There's the enterprise market, and which is our traditional, the people that we traditionally sell to. But the other market, which is the untapped market, is the developer community, and that's the market that has traditionally that the hyperscalers have owned. So we really need to provide the tools and the outreach to that market as well to encourage them to develop applications that you're absolutely right, the enterprise isn't necessarily thinking about. So we have we're working with a startup right now that's doing some really interesting work around bringing in smart screens into retail environments, it's not it's not a traditional customer that we normally do work with. However, it's a real opportunity for us to get out of our comfort zone and really get out to the edge to work with companies that we wouldn't traditionally work with, but also to create new applications that have never existed before.
Okay, absolutely. Neil, did you want to come in at all on this question?
Yeah, sure. I think, listen, I'll quote the greatest of all time: everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And I think in this space, it's so easy. You look at the internet over the last 20 years and look at the major changes or the major left hooks that have come in. Someone like Netflix, who's completely changed the way we watch TV. Apple with iPhone completely changed how we run our lives. I can't help but think, no matter what strategy we have, there'll be a few left hooks thrown that require us to be nimble and to change our strategy. And I think that's what really underpins what we're doing at BT, which is about putting flexibility into the things that we're building so that, we can address perhaps one vertical area, maybe it's healthcare, but if we have to, we can quickly pivot and bring our platform capability to something like manufacturing. And then I think I totally agree with Beth on the developer community. How do we engage with them, and how do we bring them to that party? But also the customers have always got their own mind about what they want to do. And actually, one of our biggest risks in networking is customers who do it themselves. So, I think I'd love to be able to say, our strategy is pinpoint correct. And we're focused on the things that are going to drive the huge value. But I think there's a lot of unknowns in this space. And I think unless you're open to the unknowns and you're open to experimentation, I think you're gonna cul-de-sac yourself pretty quickly. So flexibility, being able to be nimble, things that telcos are not well known for, but I think we're starting to realize we have to play a stronger part in. And that's the strategy that we're trying to deploy at BT, and really be open to any engagement that we think a customer believes that there's value in it for them, and being really, really, really open ear to our customers and listening very carefully.
Absolutely. As my granny used to say, expect the worst, hope for the best, but prepare for anything. Maybe that should be the motto for telco strategies.
Motto.
Nigel, did you want to come back? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I just actually, if I may, ask Neil a question and others too. But just on that point of agility, I'm just curious as to, Neil, you're mentioning having to be more agile, etc., and the fact that telcos haven't always been known for that attribute. Do you think that the circumstances that we're finding ourselves in now, with all of the lockdowns and the working from homes and the things that you as operators have had to deal with, do you feel from inside that industry and the community, do you feel that you are starting as an industry to understand you can be more agile? And is this opening up a different way of thinking within the operator? Because it seems to me the operator community has done an incredible job of keeping the lights on, so to speak. And that hasn't come from nowhere. So I'm just wondering if the culture is starting to change as a result of some of the things that are being forced upon all of us.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic question. Actually, I think the culture has always been there. I think what we've lacked is leadership, brave leadership. And I think what I see right now is a world where we as operators are more, less risk averse to transformation. So, when COVID started, to give an example, we were halfway through, in fact, not even halfway through, probably quarter of a way through a Teams transformation that had a 3-year plan. And we basically pivoted that to a 3-day plan. And I see both from our market, but also from our customers, more of an appetite to push through on transformation. And especially digital. We've seen chains of pubs move to online ordering almost in a week that would have been a 2-year plan. And I think that, we weren't able to do that because we had some big culture change. No, we were able to do that because it's always been there. It's always been part of who we are. We've just let our own kind of lack of leadership or our own braveness want to lead that. And for me, it's hell yes. That's where I want to be for our customers, at the forefront, helping them change really quickly as they can go, and actually for us to get out and push them a little bit, because in this world of COVID, what we're seeing now is because we've been able to react to that and our customers are braver, they're now expecting that all the time. And it's something that we're having to step up a little bit towards, because it's not something, we as leaders have been used to. So for me, this last 6 months has been probably the most transformative time in telecommunications ever. And I think what we're trying to do at BT is build on that snowball and make sure that, as we hopefully get control of this virus, that we don't lose that edge, because I think it's been wonderful for our industry and wonderful for our customers who've really benefited from it. And I think if we weren't ready to do what was required, heaven forbid where we'd be right now. And I'm very proud, as I know Beth is as well, of the reaction that we as operators have done. In fact, in BT we had a number of people recognised by the Queen only last week for our engagement and leading this. So, the time is now, the place is now. We're ready to roll. We're ready to collaborate with customers. We're ready to try new things, be it in the edge or anywhere else in your network. We are really, we're almost overexcited to want to try these new edge capabilities.
I'll add to that. I mean, we were able to pivot and tweak our network in real time to support the rapidly changing traffic patterns caused by COVID. And so we were able to stay ahead of our customers. We had one customer that sent 9,000 people home to work from home, and we stood up 2 VPN gateways in 2 days to achieve that. So customer was very happy. So as Nigel said, it's something that it's in our DNA. Where telecoms are engineering companies, but we also are very sensitive about keeping the lights on. And so it was COVID. It started before COVID, but COVID kind of gelled it all for us.
Okay, excellent. Definitely much more of a lean forward approach to the industry, I feel, right now, and that's coming through here. So, Guy, I'm going to come over to you now to give us an update before we move on to some more questions, and there's more flooding in, and I feel we're not going to get to the end of the list, but over to you now.
I don't think so. Thanks, Ray. Yeah, I think we need to catch our breath for a few seconds before we go into our next round of probably quick-fire questions. Right, we've heard from all our guests, and we should take a look, as Ray said, at our viewer poll, which we've been running throughout this 3-day event. Now, we've been asking you if public cloud platforms should play a role in telco edge strategies, and we gave you 4 possible answers, ranging from you bet to no way. And as you can see from this graphic, TelecomTV's viewers are right behind efforts to forge closer relationships. Yes, there's a little degree of hesitation from some, but I think the main message here is go for it. If you haven't already done so, please cast your vote. You can still influence the outcome, legally, I hasten to add, and keep sending us questions for our guests, although you better be quick because we have got so many stacked up now, we're going to have to really go for it. Ray, should we take our first quickfire question?
Yes. Okay. Now, this is one that came in yesterday, and this is very specifically for Jose Antonio. And so it's a very specific question about how a neutral host would handle a specific situation. And the scenario given is 2 users on different mobile networks, but playing the same augmented reality game in this case. If they were playing that game using that neutral edge asset, where is the interconnect and game logic hosted is the question. So quite a specific and detailed question. So Jose Antonio, is that something that you can talk about at all?
Yes, there are different approaches to this question. One approach is there could be different mobile operators with different platforms. So there needs to be a coordination between the platform. From the neutral host perspective, we have been evaluating the possibility of mobile operators sharing edge platform. And if this is so, they just need to connect to that edge platform. The platform will do the local breakout for each of the users because they're using the same platform. And the integration will be done at application layer. So this scenario is pretty much a very good example on optimization of edge implementation by sharing its capabilities between mobile operators.
Okay, excellent. Great, thanks for that. Guy, I think we'll swiftly move on to the next question as we've got quite a lot to get through and not so much time. Back over to you.
Indeed. Thanks, Ray. This one's coming in. Well, it's addressed to Neil specifically, but it's an operator type question. AWS are ambitious to own their edge and are building out a telco-centric business development organization. What do operators think of that?
I think it's great. Listen, Amazon are a fantastic partner for us at BT. We run a lot of our own IT on Amazon. They're truly the leader in cloud technology. So we welcome it. You could take the age-old telco approach, which is to kind of run from it and be scared. But I believe in embracing it. So if Amazon are going to be on the edge, then they'll be on our edge, and on our edge they'll be better than they'll work better than anyone else's. So I welcome it. I look forward to collaborating with them, and we are collaborating with them on many projects right now. So, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, bring your best, because if you want it to be brilliant, you need it to be on BT.
There you go. Bring it on. Yeah, we'll have the more the merrier. The more the merrier.
Oh yes.
Beth?
Yeah, and I'll build on that because we've already announced partnerships with AWS and Microsoft Azure. I'm sure there's plenty of others. It's a multi-cloud environment. That's what our customers want. That's what our customers need, and we're ready. The internet peering is alive and well, and the telco providers are very well positioned to provide that multi-cloud environment for our customers.
Thank you, Beth. Ray, let's take the next one.
Okay, so I'm going to combine 2 questions here and throw it out to the group. So there's a question here about whether existing edge asset, it makes the reference to CDNs, how content delivery networks have been an early use case for edge computing. But asking whether those existing edge assets that are being used for CDN type applications, whether they can then be used for other services and other applications as well, or whether they are CDN specific. And another question that I'm going to throw in here and attach to this is, are there any particular catalysts that are fueling edge strategies at telcos? Any particular tipping point that will lead to greater investment or new partnerships, or just an expansion of strategies? So can existing assets be used for new applications? And what are the tipping points for telcos? So does anybody particular want to start on that at all?
Well, I'll take the first question. Yeah, the first question.
Yeah.
So CDN networks are very highly tuned for one-way delivery of content. So, as long as that edge model meets that criteria where you're delivering content out but not taking content back in, then yes, you can use the CDN networks for that purpose. Although for the most part, CDN networks don't tend to be as far out in the edge as you would expect. Most of them are typically within data centers. So they're not as friendly toward edge type, truly edge type applications than you might think. So for that type of push content, they're great. However, more and more edge applications are pull, where particularly IoT device type applications, which I would say are the type of applications that are pushing the edge, which is applications where the content is coming from the outside and coming back in. So we're seeing that with industrial type applications, logistics, of course, gaming, where the application is in both directions, where the content's being pushed out, but aspects of the game, what the user is doing affects it and will make changes to the game on the fly. So those are the types of applications that really, I think are tipping over to needing these edge type infrastructures and support from the telcos.
Okay, great. Neil, in our conversation, we talked about CDN applications and the use of edge. Can BT's existing edge assets be used for other applications? And are there any other general tipping points that might lead BT to do even more that it's already doing at the moment?
We've been modernizing, if you like, our CDN to take advantage of our BT network cloud. So for us, there's some aspects of CDN that's optimized. I think over time that's become less of a concern, because whilst we once optimized for CDN, there's a whole lot of applications that have come up and need the same level of optimization as CDN. And then throw in gaming, which needs, if you're doing streaming gaming in your CDN, then you need 3D hardware in the cluster as well, which then actually I can use during the day for, enterprises to do 3D modeling of their products. So, one of my big challenges in the early days of NFV was actually, can you really build a platform that is agnostic to the application? And I think more and more we've got to that point over the last 10 years as we've been experimenting with NFV and cloud and clustering technologies and CPU technologies are allowing us to do much more of that than perhaps I might have thought 10 years ago. But I think overall, if you've got a compute device and it's Intel, you can use that, but ultimately when we get into large scale, we're going to want to optimize it. We're going to want to manage yield very carefully. Let's not forget power and the impacts of power and power efficiency on the wider environment. And that to me feels like, we'll probably end up, I think, with maybe 3 or 4 different shapes of platform for different types of use cases. And we will need to be able to orchestrate that. And actually, for our customers, we'll probably need to be able to identify that actually this type of use case, let's move it to that equipment with the AI chips in it, so that we can use our AI capability to give the customer the data insight that they're looking for in this use case. And that's one of the things that excites me about this is, all these sort of applications, bouncing around inside our network cloud, bringing value to our customers, and using different types of technology, different partners, different software, different skill sets to do that. I think it's a tremendously exciting voyage that we're about to go on in this space.
Absolutely. It's like a live sandbox in a way, isn't it? Okay, Guy, we're probably beyond time, but let's get one more in.
Right, we will, Ray. We've just authorised the overtime payments, so we're good to go for another few minutes. Yes, last question has got to be, there's more coming in, but I'm afraid this will have to be the last question, and it's a nice one. Compute infrastructure at the telco edge facilities seems obvious, but how would it be dimensioned to support the unknown edge applications, especially given the limited space and power that's available? So, how do we provision for what we don't know is going to come? Nigel, let me ask you that one first.
Thanks. So actually, I think that builds nicely on some of the things that Neil was just saying about the way we're getting much closer to a point where we can look at infrastructure supporting any application, and this applies to a degree to CDN, but other things. Essentially, what we need to do is we need to be able to get a more granular level of configuration in real time or near real time, or certainly dynamically. And a lot of the challenges that we've had up until this point is being able to be able to balance the need for flexibility and reconfiguration of applications and capacity and so on, with the need for high performance, where we might have had to tie an application to a particular interface at the NIC card or the processor level even. So there's been some conflicting things going on. Yes, you could make it work. Yes, you could get the performance, but you have to kind of hardwire it in a way that then loses some of that cloud flexibility in terms of resource placement and so on. So a couple of things are moving forward on that. One is we now have the ability to do what we call late binding. So if we have an application that requires a particularly high sort of data throughput, a data plane requirement, we can now also in a sort of software environment, we can configure that to be instantiated, but also to the level of providing that underlying almost hardware, if you like, connectivity. So using things like SRI IOV as a common case. So we can attach sort of performance interfaces underneath the applications as they're deployed. Whereas before we might have had to have pre-configured that and therefore reserve a set of hardware specifically for that type of application. So we're losing that requirement to sort of hard code some of the infrastructure. And what that does is it opens up the possibility then to get to that panacea that Neil talked about, where we can say, look, we have some generic infrastructure with generic capabilities. We can configure that infrastructure as required as the applications are formed we're talking a containerized environment, to be able to deliver some of those high performance applications. But if we don't need that, then we don't need to configure it, and we can also use that infrastructure for other applications that don't have some of the same requirements of the underlying infrastructure. So there is flexibility there today. And the other thing we've announced recently is a project that allows us to start using more of the underlying hardware capabilities, such as GPUs and so on. So the point is that we are getting to a point now where we can start to think of the infrastructure as a generic resource, independent of the type of performance of applications that needs to run on it. And if we can do that, the more we can do that, the more we can make maximum use and optimize the use of relatively small footprints out at the edge.
Thank you, Nigel. Rolf, do you want to add anything to that as well?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question, because it really shows one of the key problems we'll be having. We need to, if we want to have scalability, it has to start on an economic level. So you need to have the ability to grow without having had a huge upfront investment. So like an on-demand consumption-based pricing of the equipment will definitely be one element of such an equation. The other element is that the hardware itself can then also grow on its own, and you have modularity on the hardware. And then moving the next step upwards would be to have connectivity within the or between the components, with which you can then flexibly deploy your container platforms on top of it. And then last but not least is the application brokering. You have to have the ability. Coming back to the question around the gaming, you have to have the ability of flexibly deploying the applications and retrieving them, so that you don't have to pay all the time for the compute which is being consumed, or the connectivity, and all these elements, they need to be orchestrated again, which then leads to the point that the orchestration will become one of the pivots in the future mode of operations of an edge provider.
Great, thanks very much, Rolf. Unless anybody else wants to come in with a really short response, I think we should wrap things up here. Yep, it looks like our time is well and truly up. The red light is flashing in front of me, arms are waving. The barman has our drinks ready at the bar, I believe, and that'll be a Negroni for Ray and a little Babycham for me. A big thank you to all our guests and to all of you watching the programme, and for sending in your questions. Very much appreciated. That is it for today, and indeed this year's Edgenomics Summit. It's been a great debut, and we are already making plans for next year, obviously, whether that be virtual or in person, or both, who knows. Next month sees another debut with the premiere of our new Open RAN Summit, and boy have we got another great lineup of guests for you with that. It's all very exciting, and it's all part of our ongoing DSP Leaders program as we chart the evolution of CSPs to digital services providers. We hope you can join us for that, but until then, thank you very much for watching and taking part this week. Stay safe and see you again soon. Goodbye.